What if I told you that all life is African? What if I told you that the oldest human culture developed in Katanga, Congo? Or what if I told you that the Ethiopian Australopithecus known as Lucy is also known as Dinkwanish? What if I told you that every black face is a descendant of an ancient Egyptian? Or that no country has as many pyramids as Sudan? What if I spoke about the library in Kemet and Alexander's pillaging of knowledge, the burning of books of culture and philosophy? What if I told you that the Vikings were the most preeminent slave owners and that the 11th century saw Dublin as the slave capital of the world? Would you believe me if I told you that white people enslaved their own kind first? Or that St. Patrick was a runaway slave, a drapetomaniac? What if I told you that Pythagoras was taught by some smooth-faced Egyptians, as was Thales and Anaxagorou? What if I explained Egyptian mystery schools to you? What if I told you that all great European philosophers were trained by black Africans in Iona? Or what if I told you what Herodotus said about the Colchians? What if I told you what Gandhi said about Western civilization? What if I told you about Europe's dark ages and how they sat in comparison to the empires of Mali and Kush? What if you knew about Abu Bakr II? What if I told you that Columbus never stepped foot on American soil and that Africans were navigating the globe with papyrus-reed ships in 2600 BC? What if you knew about Cheops boats and that Europeans didn't have a concept for latitude or longitude until the 18th century? What if I told you that racism was invented? What if I told you that we only ever oppress those who are powerful? What if I told you that in the 16th and 17th century, white indentured servants and black slaves fought subjugation together? What if I told you about J.F. Blumenbach and his obsession with racial purity and white slave women? What if you knew about David Walker's appeal? What if I told you what Columbus said when he first saw Arawak Indians in the Bahamas? What if I told you about the suggestion made by priest Bartolomé de las Casas? Then what if I told you how many lives were lost to the grin that swept across Columbus's face? What if I told you that nothing has really changed and that racism is ever present? What if I told you about the battle at Wounded Knee in 1890 and the massacre of 300 Native Americans with a Hotchkiss gun? What if I told you that Native Americans today have a life expectancy of 46? What if I told you that the enemy is white supremacy? What if I didn't care for African history or the genocide of indigenous people and instead wrote poems about Winston Churchill, Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln, and I refrained from talking about the 54 countries that make up the British Commonwealth? What if I told you that the abolition of slavery had nothing to do with philanthropy but pure economics? What if I told you that religion has killed more people than it saved and that nothing can buy you peace? What if I told you that a teacher's job is to help you understand what you already know? What if I told you about freedom? What if I promoted violence instead of self-reliance? What if I said everyone that looked like you was a killer, a bomber, a terrorist? What if I told you that the media lies, that the news is censored and that everything has an agenda? What if I told you about Milton Friedman and the Chicago School of Economics? What if I told you about neoliberalism? What if I told you about Edward Bernays, or that since the invasion of Iraq, 110,721 innocent civilians have died nameless? What if I told you about the systematic imprisonment of black and Latino males in America? What if you knew the worth of every prison inmate? What if I told you about Francis Galton and the eugenics movement? What if I told you about NSSM 200? And what if I quoted Emerson or Thoreau and I worked on a building site? Or I knew that Shakespeare invented over 1,700 words, including the word assassination? What if I was reading the apology on the bus ride to work and work happened to be cleaning office toilets? What if I was ugly but knew how to make her smile? What if I told you that music is not popular but universal, intelligent noise resonating from the soul of the universe? What if I told you that in every bit of me is every bit of you? What if I stopped writing for a second, or a week, or a year? Would I miss something? What if I told you that love is forgiveness breathing, and every man wants to be held as tightly as every woman does? What if I told you that we all want to be wanted, and that cruelty is how weak men respond to fear? What if I told you the hardest man I'd ever known loved me the most? What if I told you the first time I punched someone I felt strong, but the crying that I did that night introduced me to a weakness I'd never felt before? What if I told you the first time I kissed a girl an earthquake found my legs, and each time I get my heart broken, I become a better poet? What if I told you that a single act of genius is the result of 1,000 failures, and every master knew nothing at the start? What if I told you I believe in you, in your heart and your life? What if I told you that the greatest gift I ever received was being told I can? What if I told you that you wrote this? Now, what if I never told you? Thank you.